We do not experience life as it is, but rather as we perceive it to be. And to be specific, we experience it through three perceptual windows: our past, our present, and our future. Here's what that means practically. Consider something that probably all of us have experienced at some point is getting that call to the office from your boss. And you don't have, a planned meeting. You don't have any reason to be going to see the boss. And so in that moment, almost every human being has experienced that feeling of, what is this about? And our mind immediately goes to, am I getting fired? Did I do something wrong? We start running down the register, trying to figure out all the things that could be the reason for us to be going to that meeting, instead of just experiencing the data that says, my boss has called me to the office. That data by itself has no inherent meaning to it. If no meaning has been assigned, if the boss hasn't told you what the meeting is about, there's no inherent meaning with that data. But we assign a whole bunch of meaning based on our past experiences, our present perception of our situation, and the things that we not only believe about the future, but what we believe this meeting could mean for our future. Now, if you were to reduce our primary functionality of our brain to its simplest form, the main function is to keep us alive. And so when we have an experience like getting the call into the boss, what our brain immediately starts doing is trying to close the loop. Right now, there's an open loop of information. New possibilities have been introduced. Previously, everything was kosher. We knew exactly where we stood. Life was normal. Now the boss wants to see us. New information has been introduced, and that information carries with it an unknown. What is this meeting about? And what could it potentially mean for me? Based on my past situation, based on my perception of my present circumstances, and based on what I not only believe about the future, but how this meeting might potentially impact my future. That's why when you get that call, oftentimes you'll immediately get a sort of sense of anxiety. What that is your brain attempting to reconcile the lack of information about the future by projecting possible futures. So it starts trying to project out all of the worst case scenarios, essentially so that you can prepare and hopefully stay alive. But it doesn't stop there. That worry oftentimes finds or isolates potential things that it believes is the reason that you got this call into the office. And so suddenly your brain starts going back into the history and saying, okay, what are the things that could have happened? Oh, you know what? Shelly didn't file that report the right way, and I bet she blamed me for it, and now I'm having to go deal with this meeting, and I'm gonna get in trouble because of her screw up. Dang it, I hate Shelly, right? And now you start thinking about all the things that you hate about Shelly, and how you hate this job, and how you hate where you're at, and you hate having to work with these imbeciles, and all of these other things. And so now all of a sudden you find yourself in a state of discontent. And so if you notice the pattern moves from worry to blame to discontent. You move from your perception of the future, and your perception of the future then creates a false scenario that now leads you into imagining something that you don't even actually know if it's true or not, assigning blame to try and close that window of the past, and then that leaves you in a state of present discontent. And so these are the three circles that our minds tend to occupy frequently because of the fact that it's always trying to close the windows. But the problem is that the future remains unknown. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so our mind is never actually able to settle the future in reality. So it has to create a scenario that's believable enough for us to feel settled about the future. In the same way, the issues of the past is that life is constantly unfolding. We're constantly gaining new information, new understanding about things that changes the way that we perceive the events of our past. There were people that maybe we had a really bad relationship with when we were young, but then as we get older, we start to understand that the circumstances that they were in and the situation it wasn't just them, but maybe there was a part that I played in, or maybe there was a circumstance that, we have a grace for it now because we've aged and we see things differently. And so our past is constantly in a state of review. But our mind doesn't like that. Our mind wants to be able to lock it down and simply say, this is what happened, this is who's to blame, this is who's responsible, so it can close the window and move on. And lastly, as Solomon said, the eye never has enough of seeing, the ear never has enough of hearing. The point is that this flesh is insatiable. There's no amount of eating that will permanently cause me to not need to eat again. There's no amount of seeing that will cause me to not need to see more or to hear more. This flesh is a black hole of experiential consumption. And so as a result of that, there is a perpetual movement towards discontent, because our mind is constantly reaching for more because of the simple fact that this flesh cannot be satiated. Our being was set up for permanence, but we live in an impermanent state. And so as a result, our mind is constantly reaching for something permanent in a flesh, in a form that it will never be able to ascertain in this life. And so discontent then becomes the place of our brain attempting to reconcile the issue of eternity in a temporal system. Now, the reason I share this is that following Jesus solves all of our problems, ultimately. But sometimes on that journey, it's helpful to understand the frameworks that we're operating in, the sort of biological operating system, if you will, that we've kind of been born into, and some of the ways that it functions, because God has uniquely input cheat codes, if you will, into the universe to resolve these issues. For example, worry is your mind projecting a false future as though it is real. Okay? Your mind is projecting a false future as though it is real. Now, you might say to me, well, wait a minute, what if my mind is right? What if what I'm believing is going to happen actually ends up happening? That is still a false future at the time that it's being presented. And the reason is because your brain does not have the ability to predict the future. No one's does. And so as a result of that, anything that is being presented to you as though it is already certain, as though it is already resolved, is false. Now, if it's presented as a possibility, as a probability, that's fine. But that's not what your brain does. Your brain presents it as though it is a certainty. And so therefore it is a false future being presented to you as though it is real. And so the way we break out of that worry circle where our mind is just spiraling and presenting, worse and worse scenarios for us, is that we have to ground ourselves in the truth. We have to take what I would call like a truth line, right? When you're in a circle, you're going round and round and round, think like a roller coaster, you're just in a loop. The way you get out of a loop is you start moving forward again. You've got to take a line. And so the way you get out of this worry circle is by taking a truth line. So practically what that looks like is, let's just say, for example, you're late on your rent and you know that an eviction is coming. To break out of the worry circle about how it's all going to work out and what's going to happen and whether, you're going to end up on the street, right? All of the things that you're worried about. The way you break out of that worry circle is you take a truth line. And so what is a truth line? The truth is you have to sit down and say, okay, but what's true right now at this exact moment? At this moment, I still have a roof over my head. Right now, in this moment, I still have a roof over my head. That's grounding yourself in the present. But as believers, we have something even better than that. We have the ability to ground ourselves in the truth. And the truth is that God loves us. And so when we're looking ahead and we're going, I don't know how this is going to work out, what I can know is that God loves me. And so even if the situation doesn't work out the way I want it to, even if the eviction comes through, what I can count on, what I can rely on is that the God of the universe loves me. That's the truth. And if I ground myself in that truth, then I don't need to worry. This is why it says that perfect love casts out fear. Because when we have been perfected in our understanding of God's love for us, we do not fear. And if we do not fear, we cannot worry.